What is up, everyone? It is Quinn here, back with another video. And a couple days ago, I talked about 3 rookies who are currently rising up my rankings. Today, I'm going to flip the script and talk about 3 players who are currently falling down my rankings. If you all enjoy the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to continue putting out rookie content, Dynasty stuff, through the draft, and then also after the draft, and then start to transition into some redraft for the 2023 NFL season. But let's just jump right into the first player who is falling in my rankings, and it is going to be Will Levis. So now Levis isn't necessarily someone who's free falling. It's not like he's going from a mid-first round rookie pick in my ranks to a mid-second, but I would say in general he is trending down at this point. Now I do understand that Levis is probably the most hated on prospect in this class. Of all the dudes who are going or projected to go top 10, I think he definitely gets the most heat. Some people don't think he belongs in the top 10. Other people don't even think he belongs in the first round. Maybe Richardson, also a guy who's getting some hate, but I think people can at least kind of see the upside there with Richardson. Levis, it seems like 90% of the stuff you hear about him is pretty negative just from the general public. But a few weeks ago, it looked like he was a lock to basically be picked in the top 4. It looked like all 4 of those quarterbacks, Stroud, Young, Richardson, and Levis, it seemed like in some order those dudes would be going in the top 4, probably at the very least like top 5. And at that point, I had Levis as my 6th overall player in terms of Superflex rookie rankings. So obviously Bijan number 1. Then I had a tier of Young, Stroud, Richardson, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then I had Will Levis leading that 3rd tier as my 6th overall player. But now it's looking like Will Levis could potentially kind of slip in this year's draft. Daniel Jeremiah and McShay both had Levis going outside the top 10 in their most recent mocks. So definitely not great there. You don't want that draft capital slipping because you could kind of ignore some of the issues and the general public's kind of consensus on Will Levis if the NFL viewed him as a locked-in early first-round pick. He starts to slip. He definitely becomes a little less secure in terms of being a dynasty asset. So at this point, I'd feel very comfortable just sliding Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of Will Levis. And then I think you could have arguments that could be made for a Jordan Addison and a Quentin Johnston. I think those guys are kind of in the same range with Levis, but Addison and Quentin Johnston both kind of have their own uncertainty when it comes to draft capital. I don't think it's impossible for him to still be picked in the top 4, go at number 3 or number 4, but it just definitely does not look as likely as it did a few weeks ago. And it kind of seems like a spot where if he doesn't go at 4, then you start to see him slip. Maybe he gets out of the top 10, and then just the security of him being guaranteed like a starting role at some point starts to fade away, or maybe that leash kind of gets shorter on him. So I think in terms of all the fantasy players, he's probably the guy I'm most interested in just to kind of see where his draft capital shakes out. So right now, definitely fallen a little bit, but not someone I'm willing to totally throw away. If he's getting picked in the first round, I still think he should be a first-round pick in rookie drafts for Superflex. Now moving over to the second player who is currently falling in my rankings, it's going to be a guy who's in the same range as Will Levis. It is going to be Quentin Johnston. So similar to Levis, he's not a guy who's totally tumbling. It's not like I've dropped him to a mid-second round, but I don't think you can feel as confident in Johnston as you did like just a few months ago. After the 2022 NFL season wrapped up, basically right after the Super Bowl, Quentin Johnston was viewed as the favorite to be the first wide receiver selected. And you'd assume that's somewhere in like the pick 10 to 15 area, maybe pick 10 to 20. And he was this guy who was billed as just a freak athlete who did have some clear flaws, but you could kind of overlook those because of his ceiling. And the NFL was obviously pretty high on him, with him being the favorite to be the first wide receiver off the board. You fast forward to now, you still have the concerns of him as a player, being a body catcher. He doesn't really maximize his physical skills until he already has the ball in his hands. So route running, like contested catches, that's really not a strength of his. But, once he gets the ball, then he really starts to play physically. And, it was a big talking point how physically dominant he was. He was going to dominate the combine. He was going to be massive. All of this stuff. Now we have his measurables, and they just don't really line up with what a lot of people were expecting. He came in a little smaller than we thought. I believe he was listed at 6'4", 212. He measured in at a little under 6'3", 208, but I mean, he's still plenty big at that size. He did jump very well in both the vertical and the broad jumps. The problem kind of came in with the 40. I mean, there was talk of him running in the 4.3s. You would hope 4.4s. Ends up running like a 4.52 at his pro day, which you can kind of bump up to like 4.57, due to the pro times being faster. That's what Player Profiler does. And that's not like a terrible time. Like if a normal 6'3", 210-pound wide receiver ran that, it wouldn't be like, oh, this guy's done, we're dropping him off our boards. But when you're expecting him to come through with this crazy number and blow everyone away, and he runs like a 4.52, 4.57, however you want to view it, it's not great. Now you look at the betting odds in terms of wide receivers to be the first one selected. He went from being the favorite to now kind of being a long shot at plus 650. And you're probably looking at him going late first round. I'm still assuming he's going in the first round, but I don't think it would be a complete shocker if he ends up going early second. And that's a big fall off from someone who you probably thought was going to be going top 15 just a month or two ago. So he's not just going to completely fall off in my rankings, but at this point, I'd probably prefer Addison. Still have to lock that in, but I would be preferring Addison probably at this point. And I just think in general, I talked about Levis. The pick 107 to 109 range in rookie drafts is looking pretty rough. You have Levis, Addison, Johnston. Those are the consensus guys in that range. And it seems like all three of them have kind of lost value throughout the pre-draft process. So not great. If you have one of those picks, right now I'd be trying to get into the top 6, probably preferably top 5. But if you like Jahmyr Gibbs, I do, then I think top 6. Or maybe move back to the 10, 11, 12 range, because it's very possible one of these three falls to 10, 11, 12. And then if not, you still have solid picks in Charbonnet or Zay Flowers. I think the general takeaway is that even if Levis and Johnston aren't moving significantly, spots down in my rankings, I just think in general you feel a lot less confident drafting them at their current prices. Where they may still be slotted into those spots, but you just don't feel great about it. So now moving over to the third player who is falling down my rankings, this is someone who's definitely kind of taken a bigger fall off. It's going to be Xavier Hutchinson. He's someone where earlier on in the offseason, I kind of liked him as a flyer at the wide receiver position. Wasn't super talked about, but kind of baked into me liking him. I believe I had him ranked as a back end of the second round in terms of rookie drafts. Baked into that was the hope that Hutchinson would get some day 2 buzz. Hopefully he'd be going round 3. Obviously round 2 would have been great, but it didn't seem super likely. Unfortunately, the odds of him going day 2, they don't seem great right now. Definitely held back by his athleticism. He's not a great athlete. That's just not how he wins. I still believe he can be a productive volume guy out of the slot at the next level. But with what we know right now, if he's being drafted around 4 or around 5, there's just no shot I can keep him in the top 24. I'd much rather just throw darts at a lot of these running backs that are probably going to go in round 3 or round 4 of the NFL draft, and then some of these pretty athletic tight ends also. So even though I like the player here with Xavier Hutchinson, there's just no shot I can keep him where I had him. And with that bad capital, if he does get bad capital, he's probably more of someone that I'd just be throwing a dart on in the 4th round. Obviously, it's still possible he could go day 2 if he goes round 3. I'd be pretty in, but at this point, it's not looking great, and he's another dude who I would just have to move down, and definitely more significantly move him down compared to Levis and Quentin Johnston. So those are going to be the 3 players: Levis, Johnston, Hutchinson. Not trending, in a great direction for those guys. Maybe they can turn it around with some draft capital, but we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you all for stopping by. That's going to wrap it up for this one, and I will see you all in the next one.